to please move for the adoption of the agenda. Can I please see a hand for the adoption? Honorable Maotwe.
Morning, Chair. Morning, everyone. Honorable members, Kosatu, Satau, our support staff. Chair, I move for the adoption of the agenda for today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Kaba. Oh, Honorable Langa. Okay, Honorable Kaba.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Let me greet you and the honorable members in the House. All protocol is observed. Let me welcome our new researcher in the committee. You are welcome, Mr. David. In this committee, feel free. We'll be looking forward to working with you in this committee. Thank you, Chair. I second the mover, Chair.
Thank you very much, members. Therewith, the agenda has been duly adopted. Let me then just also take the opportunity, Mr. Davids, to welcome you as our new researcher for the committee. We all look forward to working with you in future. It's nice that you are here in physical attendance. Thank you for that. Members, in our previous engagement regarding the Insourcing Bill, the Portfolio Committee was unable to receive the formal presentation on the bill due to a misunderstanding relating to the procedures for processing the private members' bills. The committee has since rescheduled the briefing on the Insourcing Bill for today. Allow me to just reiterate that the committee welcomes the bill before us and expresses its appreciation to Honorable Maotwe for taking the initiative to contribute towards legislative reform in the public service. Private members' bill play an important role in strengthening parliamentary democracy by enabling members to actively shape policy discourse and legislative development. The committee will first consider and adopt the minutes to guide today's proceedings, and this will then be followed by a brief presentation from Honorable Maotwe and the organizations that supported the bill during its conceptual stage. So I now invite the committee secretary to just take us through the minutes of 18 February 2026, after which we will proceed with the presentations. Masi, if you would please.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to honorable members, colleagues that are present. We have minutes
Masi,
of...
just hang on. I've got a hand from Honorable Langa. Please proceed, Honorable Langa.
Apologies, Chair, for interjection. I'm not sure if we missed the apologies.
Honorable Langa, you are quite correct. My apologies for not doing the apologies. But yes, members, we did receive an apology from Honorable Leklape. That he's joining the Health Committee today, and Honorable Gugu has just indicated that she will be joining us a little bit later today. Is there any other apologies to note from the members? Thank you very much for that help, Honorable Langa. We then move on to the agenda point number 3, the consideration and the adoption of the previous committee minutes. Masi, please help us through it.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning once again to honorable members and colleagues. These are the minutes of the 18th of February 2026, Chair and honorable members. I am on page 1. This is the minutes of the day where the committee had initially wanted to get a briefing on the Insourcing Bill. So I'm on page 1, which would be members that were present and the delegation that came and to attend the meeting. On page 2, Chair. And I'm on page 3, Chair. That's the last page, page 4. These minutes were previously sent to members to go through them so that they can read and check if these were the true reflection of what transpired during the 18th of February 2026 meeting. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Masikole. There we have it, members, the minutes for the previous meeting. Can I please have a proposer for the adoption of the minutes? Please proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Good morning to honorable members. Representation from labor unions, the support staff. I move for the adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Tikana. Honorable Langa.
Thank you very much, Chair, and greetings to you, to honorable members, to Kosatu, Satau, and our support staff. Chair, I would like to second for the adoption of the minutes of the 18th, but with just one amendment in 2.8. I think it's the second line where it says the agenda item for the day was deferred to the next meeting, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you, Chair.
Quite correct. It must say the next meeting, not the next week. Thank you, Masi. If we can just make that adjustment. And with that change, you second the adoption. Thank you.
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Langa. Members, if there are no objections, then that means the minutes have been duly approved. Thank you very much. We can then move on to the start of the show and the most important, the reason why we are here today, the briefing on the insourcing bill by the author, Honorable Maotwe. Point number 4, you are welcome to proceed, member. Thank you. Members have
Okay.
received hard copies to follow with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Greetings to my fellow colleagues, honorable members. My name is Ms O Maotwe, and I'll be leading the delegation from the EFF. I'm here on my left-hand side with our national spokesperson, Honorable Snawo Tambo. On my right is a member of this committee, Sekolise Qilishe. And greetings to everyone on the platform. Greetings to Comrade Matthew Parks from Kosatu. We are happy, Chair, that finally we reached this point where we are now presenting this insourcing bill on behalf of all South Africans. Chair, I've got the presentation, but I think the Secretary said we'll use the printed copies. So the presentation will basically cover, we'll take stock of where we are as a country, where we want to be, and how we are going to achieve what we want to achieve. So if you go to slide number 2, we'll start off by, as I said, taking stock of where we are, which is looking at the background and policy context, problem statement, and the reasons behind the insourcing bill that is before this committee. What do we have on hand that prompted us to present, or rather to table this bill in Parliament? What evidence, what empirical evidence can we put on the table? And we'll look at the rationale for this legislation. Do we require a legislation for us to achieve what we want to achieve? And what is it that the insourcing bill seeks to achieve? And now the last portion will be, how then do we go about achieving that which we wish to achieve? We'll look at the summary of key provisions that are before us on the bill. We'll look at the expected impact on service delivery and on our workers. And that will cover the brief summary, Chair, of our presentation. So if you go to slide number 3, Secretary, please move with me. Chair, since 1994, the government has expanded outsourcing. Majority of the services that government used to offer prior 1994 have since been outsourced. And we're not talking about a blanket insourcing. We're talking about specific areas of focus as a starting point in terms of bringing back the services so that we can have a capable state that delivers service delivery to its people. So we're looking at services like cleaning, your IT, your security services, your catering services, transport, healthcare services in the main as a starting point. And why we chose these services, Chair, is because these are the services that you need on a daily basis. You need to have a meeting, like we're having a meeting here in M46. The room is clean. So who cleaned it? If you go outside, the lawn is neat, is trimmed. So it means somebody has done that service of cleaning services. When you enter the gates of this parliament, you'll find police, you'll find security. When we came into this room with Somlomo, I said, hey, members of parliament can never fail you. The first thing you find when you get to a meeting is food. So majority of you, except me, I did not eat the food outside, but I have water. So the food is prepared, and that's on an ongoing basis. Majority of you, if not all of you, used transport to come to this parliament, which, by the way, that transport is outsourced. So, Chair, if we were to prolong this meeting because of engagements and opening up to stakeholders, and we find ourselves sitting at night, you'll be told that the bus is leaving. Therefore, make separate arrangements because the bus services are outsourced. So those are the services that we need on a permanent basis. There will never be a time where you come into an office that is dirty and work on an office that is dirty. So we're saying, because these services are permanent, why then do we take permanent service of the state and put it in private hands? So we've seen that outsourcing has become a default approach in terms of procurement of services throughout government and its entities. And we're saying we need to reset the button. We need to go back and say, hang on, we can't have a state that is unable to deliver services. It relies on private sector to deliver services on its behalf. So with this outsourcing, we've seen a dependence, a state dependence on contract. When a toilet is blocked, you need to rely on a private person to come and unblock the toilet. When a tissue is finished, you need to rely on an outsourced person to come and bring tissue for you. Why is government not buying these services themselves directly? In that way, government will be building internal capacity, which has gradually been weakened since the introduction of outsourcing. So, from where we are, we're saying we need to rebuild state capacity. We are a developmental state, so we cannot run our affairs wholly on private hands when we are a developmental state. The state needs to play its critical role in the lives of our people. So what exactly is the problem that we are trying to resolve here? We have a weak internal state capacity. Basically, we've eroded state capacity in its entirety. Government relies on private hands for almost everything. There's over-reliance on private contractors. There's a rising tender-related corruption. So we're saying with this outsourcing, prices get inflated, people are being killed because they're fighting for a tender. There's a lot of corruption that comes into play with the tendering system. But also the state does not have capacity in terms of contract management. And we'll touch on that when you look at the AG, what the AG is telling us. AG says there's generally poor contract management because now state is now forced to be a contract manager on behalf of the people of South Africa, instead of the state being delivering the services to the people of South Africa. Chair, with outsourcing comes exploitation of workers. Because, a typical example, a person gets a security tender and the state pays a certain amount. Let's say, for argument's sake, the state pays 20,000 per person. But the person who's actually doing that service of being a security only gets 8,000 in his or her pocket at the end of the month. So where did the 12,000 rands go to? They went to one person. And what does that then do? It creates a situation where the poor security personnel or the cleaner is unable to manage his or her life. Instead of getting 20,000, now you are getting 8,000. You won't be able to afford medical aid. You won't be able to afford to take your kids to proper schools. You won't be able to buy a car, buy a house, just the basics of what you need as a human being. And also, there's limited job security because it's a contract. It's going to end in a year's time, in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time, in 5 years' time. And therefore, there is no job security. The bank will never offer you a loan to buy a house that you are supposed to repay in 30 years when your contract is only 5 years. So that's just basics of it. And at the end of it all these factors then lead to a collapse in service delivery. A collapse in the sense that now a blocked drain needs to be serviced by an outside person. You have to be on a call out to call somebody to come in and service the blocked a drain. If you are a hospital, for an example, the laundry services is outsourced. So somebody comes and takes laundry and goes and washes it. But why can't we do it internally? The food is the catering that you're talking about. Why can't the state be the one that offers that service? Secretary, you're not moving with me. I'm already on slide number 5. So what evidence do we have to back up this challenge that you say we're faced with? The AG tells us in the 2023-2024 report, and I quote, "Poor contract management and dependence on service providers are key causes of project failures and financial loss." And that is the AG in 2023-2024 report. Then she further says that 60% of auditees, like state-owned organs, they record materially non-compliant findings when we do audits. So 60% of that which the AG audits comes back and say there's material non-compliance with the legislation of this country. And much of these are found in procurement-related services, which are outsourced. Then the AG says, over a period of 5 years, there's been a record of 406 billion rands in irregular expenditure. You know, the biggest ticket item in the budget speech of the minister is always the debt. So we're repaying debt is the biggest line. But it's not as big as this irregular expenditure that the AG is recording. So debt to service. So with this money that we're losing through irregular expenditure of outsourced services, we can actually service our debt as a country with ease. So 406 billion rands is lost just in irregular expenditure. And the AG also says there's more than 10 billion rands which gets lost in fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So 406 billion rands on irregular expenditure. The biggest, the highest, even beyond the debt to service, which the minister always says takes about 70% and above of the budget. So it means we are in a crisis as a country. And that crisis, at the center of the crisis, is this outsourced services. And that is what the AG is telling us. So it calls for us as lawmakers to say, hang on, surely there is something that we need to do and do it right. We've got laws in the country, as I move to the next slide, we've got laws in the country, but are they sufficient? What laws are we having? Somebody will say, but we've got PFMA that should be regulating that. PFMA tells you that this is the money and this is the process you need to follow, but it doesn't tell you the how part of it. It doesn't say the default is at the moment outsourcing and therefore look into insourcing. If you talk about exploitation of workers, the Labor Relations Act does not tell you or address the issues of job security as an example. Because it is a fact that if a contract is 5 years, it's 5 years and it's going to end. And if a contractor gets a tender of 20,000 rands a month, that should be for a certain service. But the actual people who do the service is 8,000 rand. That is not addressed by Labor Relations Act. And therefore, it then calls for us to say, we need to enact a law that is going to reset the pattern, bring back services that will secure people's jobs, that will then be able to give the state the capacity it so much need to provide services to our people. Because government, honestly, they heavily rely on outsourcing. Basic services are done by contractors. The skills inside the state have gradually declined. And there are just too many problems and corruption in terms of the tendering system, which then means that there's weak controls over contractors. Workers in insourced jobs, they've got no security. The accountability also becomes unclear. So the bill really seeks to reset the button, give clarity where it is needed, and give our people the much more security they deserve. But at the center of it, the state will be able to provide its own services to its own people. The next slide, we look at what the bill seeks to achieve. The bill seeks to bring back key services into the state. The bill seeks to reduce over-reliance on contractors. The bill seeks to build internal capacity and skills inside government, improve accountability in service delivery, and fast-track service delivery. Instead of waiting for a tender to end and then you appoint a service provider, there you have the skills that are able to do that. We used to have those skills, Chairperson. Building of the roads, building of government institutions, hospitals, schools, institutions of government, those functions used to be done by the state. Let's promote stable and secure jobs for our people, for their own welfare. You will never have a good society if they've got no security. If you lose a job today, the likelihood is that in the next 6 months, we'll be meeting you at the clinic because your high blood will be high. You won't be able to pay for services. You won't be able to pay for your kids' school. You are stressed. That puts pressure on now health. So there's ripple effect on what outsourcing does to our people versus insourcing. And there's no price tag to it. You can't say the livelihood of our people is at this cost. There's no price tag. So you can't compare and say, you're going to save 20 million rands here, but with insourcing, you're going to lose money. What about our people that the state needs to look after? So at the end of the day, we want to have a capable and developmental state with full capacity. The next slide, Chair, we're looking at what services are we looking at as we start this process. As I said earlier on, it's not a blanket insourcing of everything, including big technical things that we are not able to do at the moment. But as a start, let's start with the services that we know. They're ongoing, they're permanent, and they are there being offered. So it means the skill is there in the country. Of course, there'll be other things that you might not be able at this point to insource. But there's BOT, Build, Operate, Transfer. 2 days ago, the MEC of Finance in Gauteng announced that Gautrain will now be handed over to the state. We're happy to hear that. That's a typical BOT project, Build, Operate, Transfer. Now, Gautrain has run its course, it's now being handed over to the state. So those are the things that we say, because you're going to need Gautrain forever. There'll never be a time where there are no workers going from point A to point B, or just ordinary people going from point A to point B. And therefore, the state should be capable to offer that transport to our people. So in cases where we are unable to do insourcing immediately, let's look at other models of build, operate, and transfer, like in the case of Gautrain. So in the immediate, Chair, we're looking at cleaning services as an example. And I spoke about it. Security services, the gardening services, maintenance and repair, catering services, transport services. I gave an example with this very parliament that is unable to transport its own members and relies on a private person. IT services, administration support services, things like audits. Why do we outsource auditing team? Why do we outsource HR as a function, as an example? And healthcare-related support services. You know, we've got so many ambulances that are privately owned. Why can't the state offer ambulances to our people? It was like that before. Why is it that now ambulances, you rely on our private sector to offer those services? So as we say, Chair, as I conclude on this issue of which services are we looking at? We're looking at continuous and long-term services that are offered by the state. That is not an ad hoc thing. It's not a dam that a certain part is missing and you must come with a required skill to come and change some pump in it and it's a once-off thing in 50 years. No, we're talking about day-to-day activities of our people. So what key mechanisms are we talking about on the bill? Chair, the bill seeks to require the minister to develop a national insourcing policy that will guide all organs of state. We are in a mess now, Chair, over 30 years into democracy. With all the laws we have in the country, they have not resolved the issue of insourcing because there's no law to it. There's no law that forces accounting officers to say, before you go and look outside, first look inside if you've got that capacity. And that's why we're beginning to say, let every project start inside. Let the accounting officers say, do we have this skill inside? Yes. If we have, then let's do it ourselves. Do we not have? No, we don't have. Then let's look at going outside. So the minister needs to develop that. The policy, as we said, Chair, will promote the use of internal staff to deliver services to our people directly. And we limit unnecessary outsourcing. We outsource in areas where insourcing in the immediate is not possible or is not practical. But then we postpone that insourcing while we are working internally to create capacity, get the required skills, and then have that capacity internally. So this bill will require government departments and institutions to assess their skills that they already have, identify gaps, if any, and strengthen their own internal capacity over time. But the ultimate aim of this bill, Chair, is to make insourcing the standard approach without, or rather with outsourcing used only where it's clearly necessary. But the default approach should no longer be outsourcing. The default approach should be insourcing of our workers. On the next slide, Chair, we talk about the responsibilities. What will be the responsibilities of the organs of state? You're welcome. So government departments, municipalities, and public entities will be required to implement this insourcing and make practical arrangements to bring these services in-house. The services were there before. The skills got eroded over time because they were not being used. Currently, the state is being used to push paper, literally, and try to do what you call contract management, which does not seem to come right also because why would we be having so many findings if you had proper controls and proper contract management in place? So it means the government is lacking on that regard. So why want to be a state that is the contract manager when you should actually be the state that provides services to your people? And that's what we're saying. So the responsibility of the accounting officers, which are already there, is to say, we have to ensure that the staff is properly deployed, the staff has got the necessary skills, and the systems in place to support the insourcing, and that services can be delivered internally as opposed to delivered externally. So what will then be the process? When there's a need, or when the need arises, accounting officers should say, let's look inside. This skill do we have? Municipalities, Chair, they need to be able to give water to the people without relying on private. They need to be able to collect waste without depending on private hands. We're here in Cape Town, we're bragging about how clean it is. It's because the service is insourced, it's not outsourced. 3 weeks ago in Johannesburg, we saw the contractor striking and not removing waste from households. And that created a big problem. It's a health hazard not to clean the city. So where services are insourced, you can immediately see the changes that comes into play. So the shift responsibility, or the shift gets moved. The responsibility is then moved back to the state, for the state to manage and deliver services directly to the people. The question now is, will outsourcing continue? Of course, there are contracts that are in place now. And those contracts, we must see them until the end. So we do not completely ban outsourcing, as I said, but outsourcing will only be done in cases where there's no skill. There's no one in the country who can offer that skill, or one in the department or in the government institution who can offer that, that service, while bringing back that service into the department or the entity or the state-owned enterprise. So before any outsourcing is approved, there has to be a process that the institution has done its work in identifying gaps, making sure that there is no skill. With treasury, you'll do what is normally called a deviation. So we're going to require the same thing here. You need to be told, why can't this service be insourced? What are the reasons? Why is it that at this point you are unable to insource these services? So the intention really, as I said, is to make outsourcing a temporary relief, but insourcing must rather be permanent. So the accounting officers and the institutions will be required to report regularly on which services are outsourced and explain why they do not insource. It's already happening, Chair, that governments, they come to the portfolio committees and they report. So there's nothing new. We're not adding anything new here. It's the same. We're still going to manage them the same way they are being managed on a regular basis, how we check progress on the things that they've committed, how far they are with their targets, are they meeting their targets, or what are the challenges. We'll still be able to have that report. So if there's a training that is needed, like I said, on the BOT, Build, Operate, Transfer, when is that training going to happen? Is it happening? Is the staff being equipped? Is the staff being skilled to take over that responsibility, so that you don't have a total collapse of services of the state by the state? And the minister will then table that annual report in Parliament in terms of overall progress of insourcing. This, Chair, we guarantee you, it will create a clear system of monitoring, clear system of transparency, and clear system of accountability with absolute clarity on what the state does. Chair, of course, there'll be exemptions, like I said, in cases where we are unable to insource immediately. That's on the next slide. And that should be limited, and it should be defined with absolute clarity of why do we seek exemption or a deviation in this regard. So in cases where there's a deviation required or an exemption required, a process will have to be followed of applying for that exemption. I gave an example with what normally happens with the National Treasury in terms of deviations when the Treasury has issued a note of some sort. So these exemptions will ensure flexibility while making sure that service delivery is not disrupted. But at the same time, we then bring back that service internally. So in terms of the transitional arrangement between now and between the time of the bill being enacted into law and the existing contracts, we are saying we do not cancel existing contracts. They still run. Of course, we are hoping that there's no evergreen contract on catering. It's our hope that there's no company with an evergreen contract on security. If that is the case, it has to be flagged, and we need to be explained how come there's an evergreen contract on catering. So services that are already outsourced will continue to run their course until those contracts reach their end date. And during this transaction period, the institutions will be preparing themselves to then insource. So I've seen that a lot of government departments, they've got a cafeteria or a catering room, a dining area. So maybe you want to, change the stove, make it a 2026 model stove. The transition period is allowing you to do that, to insource, to rather buy and prepare yourself for the insourcing. So in that transition period, you'll indicate what skills gap do you have, how are you going to recruit those skills back into the service, and you ensure that knowledge is transferred from the existing contracts or contractors so that you don't lose the knowledge in the process. Where contracts run for long periods, as I said, service providers may be required to train government employees so that the service can then be taken over internally in the future. But it's my hope that, once again, there's no evergreen contract on catering. Even Gautrain was not evergreen, Chair, because now, in our lifetime, we see Gautrain being handed over back to the state. So what will be the impact of the bill? The bill is expected to strengthen the ability of the state to deliver services directly and consistently without any delays. It aims to rebuild internal skills and reduce long-term dependence on contractors. The bill supports more stable and secure employment for workers who currently operate under outsourced arrangements. We've got experience in Johannesburg, Wits University. Wits University insourced the cleaners who were paid very low wages, by the way, and they were contractors. But when they were insourced, now there were benefits to it. So a child of a domestic worker is now able to study at Wits for free, something that the outsourcing did not give. So the lecturers at Wits, who are highly paid, by the way, their kids were going to Wits for free. Our ordinary workers, our mama and our tata, who are not earning a lot, their kids were not allowed to study for free. So ka insourcing e rare, bo mme le bo ntate ba ba berekang ko Wits, ba ba konomakang ko Wits, ba kgonne gore yana le bone bana ba bone ba tsene ko Wits University for free, a benefit that came with insourcing. So insourcing brought that benefit, but equally, they are now able to afford a medical aid. They can afford to buy a car. They can afford to take their children to better schools. They can now afford to apply for a loan for a house. Basic needs of our people are now being able to be implemented because of the insourcing. So, with the insourcing, you are bringing the good welfare of the people. At the same time, you have a state that is delivering service to its citizens. And you reduce procurement risk. I mean, we can spend the whole day here talking about the corruption and tendering system. That's why we need more police, we need, the hawks, we need everybody to. Where is the source of this problem? It's the tendering system. So outsourcing, that's what outsourcing brings. Chair, in conclusion, we're calling for a structural response to the long-term weakening of internal state capacity. Without a structural reform, we'll never achieve what we want to achieve. We'll permanently be complaining about unemployment, about inequality, about poverty. What this bill seeks to do is to address those three challenges. It recognizes that many services required by government are permanent. And because they are permanent in nature, it should be then delivered by the state itself. Because there will never be a time where the state says, nah, we're not going to provide security for you. We'll not provide water for you. We'll not provide catering or ambulances for you. We'll not provide a transport service. Government transports a lot of them. Somebody was saying to me, they were applying for something in the Department of Police, and the service used to be rendered by the police, that they would courier the documents to Johannesburg. But now they have to do it themselves, and they have to do it with a private courier. So there's a lot of things that were insourced prior 1994, which were then outsourced. By the way, it was in 1987, just before the dawn of democracy, where there was a white paper that talks about privatization and outsourcing. And that's why this problem, that's where this problem of outsourcing emanates from. So overall, Chair, the bill seeks to restore accountability, to improve service delivery to our people, to protect the workers, and strengthen the role of public sector in meeting the needs, the basic needs of our people. And that will be at the center of what we are really trying to achieve with this insourcing bill. Chair, I'll pause there for now. Thank you very much for the time. I must also extend my gratitude to our legal lady who's helped us a lot here from Parliament, and of course, the legal team and the research team of the EFF. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Maotwe. Well done indeed, good time management and a good professional presentation. I commend you for it. Members, we will now have the briefing by the organisations or individuals of the public comments received by the author of the bill. I will ask Mr. Parks from COSATU to go first, whereafter the representative from Sitawu, Ms. Didat, will proceed. Ms. Didat, would you like to ask a question?
Just a point of clarity, Chair. So just before the meeting happened today, we did a caucus, and Comrade Matthews will be presenting on behalf of COSATU as well as Sitawu. And if there's anything that I'd need to add, I will then make a submission. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very, very much. That's wonderfully efficient. Mr. Parks, you can proceed. Thank you.
Good morning, members. Good morning, Chair. Special good morning to Honourable Maotwe, our presenter today. My name is Matthew Parks from COSATU. So quite excited to be here today, Chair. This has been a burning issue for workers, for COSATU for many years. For those who are not aware of what is this creature called COSATU, we're the largest federation in the country of trade unions. We have about 1.5 million members across most sectors of the economy. So we have members in the public services who see the issues of outsourcing. But also we have members, as Comrade Hamida is from Sitawu, who have seen outsourcing in the private sector and the conditions, the difficulty it's imposed upon workers. So Chair, we, as COSATU, are unashamedly in support of this bill. We look forward to its passage by Parliament, hopefully by yesterday. And I think more critically, Chair, is about implementation by the state, because we can have many good laws. I think as Honourable Maotwe said, we often see the state capacity to implement them or to abide by them often is a challenge. But Chair, this bill in simple, it really responds to workers' calls for state organs to insource what are often very routine functions that any, say, workplace would be required to do. And where this isn't possible, yes, provide for a process for authorization for exemptions. So we think, Chair, it does strike a fair balance, as all legislation must always have a fair exemption process, not a blank check. But Chair, look, it speaks to COSATU's long-standing demand to insource key functions performed by the state organs. Also, without us speaking on behalf of the ANC, our alliance partner, but we're very confident speaks to ANC positions, speaks to alliance positions, things we've discussed collectively, and I think even beyond the alliance itself. As Honourable Maotwe says, it speaks to the EFF, and will convince many other parties too. Chair, I think for us, we took comfort that we think there's a lot of thought that went into the bill. It wasn't just a pamphlet. It spoke to specific issues in the state we've seen real problems with. So security, cleaning, gardening, catering, transport, admin, healthcare, maintenance, IT, auditing, etc. And we think that provides a useful discussion point because, you know, a Department of Home Affairs is always going to have to secure its premises. It's always going to need to make sure Home Affairs is clean when members of the public come in. It's going to need to have hands-on IT capacity to manage issues, etc. So we're not speaking about random things, but things which are part of the day-to-day ability of the state to perform its legal mandates. And again, where an exemption is generally needed, we think there's a fair process around it. Chair, we do appreciate, because this is the Portfolio Committee dealing with public service, And we do appreciate kind of the pragmatic approach taken by the honourable member, that it's focused on national provincial departments. We would love when this bill comes into law, we then have a discussion around state-owned enterprises, around local government, etc. But we do appreciate, Chair, that that's beyond this committee's ambit. But this is a good first step in a journey. Chair, look, as a trade union federation, our number one mandate is about protecting workers' rights, making sure that the good progressive labor laws we have find expression into workers' daily work experiences. And we've seen time and again when it comes to outsourcing, the labor laws are there in paper, nice English words. It's not a reality for these workers in these outsourced companies. So collective bargaining is undermined. Labor rights blatantly ignored. You have fragmenting of the workplace. The conditions of service deteriorate in terms of wages. Do you get an annual increase? Do you have medical aid? Do you have pension, etc.? We've had cleaning workers, Chair, just across the road of Parliament, from Parliament. So we hear you have annual leave, but we're too scared to ask for it, lest I be dismissed when I come back. We've seen, Chair, that some employers in the state have often sought to deflect labor issues to private sector employers. I don't feel like being bothered with managing staff, dealing with their grievances. Let me just give it to some private company, and I can just sign the check and claim the credit. But Chair, we also know this has been done to undermine workers' ability to negotiate, because, you know, workers' strength, Chair, it lies upon numbers, just like a political party. And if workers are scattered, then your ability to negotiate, to improve your working conditions is fundamentally undermined. This is not just a question of COSATU being, you know, irritated. The right to form a trade union, the right to collective bargaining is enshrined in the Constitution. So it's not an abstract issue, it's fundamental. And we often feel that many employers across the state actually want to undermine the ability of workers to negotiate. They would claim at times this is about reducing state expenditure, but the consequence is we sacrifice the legitimate right of any worker to a living wage, to pension, to medical aid. So the nice example Ms O Maotwe made about Wits University's staff, you work at the same institution as a lecturer, but you don't have the same right to send your child to university. And, you know, university education for that cleaner will be a generational upliftment. It'll take that family out of poverty, etc. And so we know many of those employers will know that those, what they call labor broker or private sector suppliers, won't hesitate to suppress workers' rights. And they know that if workers make a noise, they'll just simply dismiss that worker. So insourcing really tries to help uplift or bring into reality the cause of decent work. Chair, you know, there's always been this mantra that says outsourcing will save the state lots of money. You will ignore the wage increases, medical, pension, etc., etc. It doesn't. What it does, Chair, is that it displaces that, but it brings profiteering into the factor. Because those companies who are providing the service are not the Pope. They're not doing it for free. They want their profit margin, and that margin for profit will be made at the expense of the cleaner, the security guard, etc. And you can be sure that profit margin, they would want it to increase above inflation every year. And again, Chair, the victim is those cleaners, those workers, whose already very low wages, they're not living wages, will be further suppressed so that we can elevate profit, etc. Chair, we've also seen that the other third driving force in this kind of phenomenon in the last 3 decades of democracy is that we have a very insatiable lust for wealth by this emerging tenderpreneur class. And we're not saying the private sector mustn't exist, but we're saying we have a tenderpreneur class which is feasting off of the state. And if you look at the state with a 1 trillion rand annual procurement budget for goods and services, that's a very tempting giant cake. And we all know the stories. I think all members would know the horror stories across the country. But we've seen, Chair, across the state, a real stampede to outsource things all the time, things which government can really do with a little bit of effort all the time. Chair, again, you know, when people say insourcing is linked to cost and performance, but really it's about profits for some of these companies. And we've seen the issue of people inside the state. I will create a company, get my wife to run it, and we'll pretend it's about efficiency of cost, etc. The worst thing, Chair, is that we would all know, Chair, I'm sure all members would agree with it across the board, that often these contractors fail to provide the very goods and services they've been paid for. We've seen horror stories across the board at huge expense to the state. The state then has to intervene and pay twice. We've seen weekly headlines about inflated tenders poor services, etc. Chair, if we reflect on the decade of state capture and corruption, and it's still there, albeit not at the same pace as before, but it's still there. It's been fueled by outsourcing. And we've seen the javelin approach, where a manager creates a need to outsource, gets his cousin, his relative, etc. So you really create a very unhealthy, incestuous collaboration by corrupt elements in the public and the private sector. Chair, it also has weakened the capacity of the state to deliver simple public and municipal services that the working class, that businesses themselves, the economy depend upon. We've seen it bleeding the state of resources that should have been used to build hospitals, to maintain schools, to invest in policing, etc. And Chair, I think if we want to win this war against state capture and corruption, which I think most members would want to, then we need to begin to close this tap to insource such functions. Chair, again, I think all of us, we no longer look forward to reading the Sunday Times because we're going to see which politician, which relative got which tender, how it is inflated, how shoddy the delivery of the service was. And again, Chair, the solution's in our hands. We have to act upon this hollowing out of the state. Chair, we think the key thing is about recapacitating the state. We've really created a dangerous culture where the state is so weakened, it struggles to provide the most basic of services. And so, Chair, I think from our side, we think the bill provides a very fair and a common sense path to end this fragmentation of the state. We think this bill should appeal to every political party in Parliament as part of this journey. We think it provides space, Chair, for a really long overdue debate in Parliament on this issue. We think, Chair, critically provides a binding legislative path to help us to tackle the cancer of state capture and corruption, which is decapacitating the state, to really help protect and affirm workers' hard-won rights, especially the most vulnerable workers, and also to save the state a lot of money, which is really needed for frontline public services. So I think, Chair, for us, it's really critical for Parliament, for this portfolio committee, to provide space for meaningful debate on this issue. Chair, yes, there might be a need to polish, like with any other bill, to polish rough edges here and here. That's fine. Let's get informed input of key parts of the state. We'd be quite keen, Chair, to have the Hawks, the SIU, speaking about how they've struggled around the state capture crisis and how insourcing can actually ease the burden upon them. Chair, we do appreciate that, the EFF, much to its disappointment, isn't a majority party. So this requires cross-partisan from the ANC, the DA, the IFP, etc., MK, and so forth, to get support. But Chair, in terms of the task before this portfolio committee, in terms of consideration, we think the bill passes constitutional muster. We can't see any legal reason to prevent its consideration by the committee, by Parliament. And of course, Chair, the Constitutional Court has been quite firm on the need for Parliament to always uphold public participation, especially around workers and so forth. And of course, this is a matter of great impact to workers, to society, to the economy. So Chair, just getting to the conclusion, as COSATU, we support this timely bill. We think it's going to improve the working conditions of workers. It's going to help further dismantle state capture networks, save the state money which could be used for frontline public services. We think it's a very fair and common sense path to end this fragmentation of the state. We do really want to, Chair, commend Honourable Maotwe for her leadership in bringing this bill to Parliament. And Chair, yes, this bill has been tabled by the EFF, but it speaks to COSATU, to the Alliance, to workers' aspirations and hopes and policies. And we, Chair, look, this is not the first time we've helped a private member's bill get passed. As COSATU, we helped Honourable Dudley, who was from the ACDP, to pass the paternity leave bill. We helped a former colleague of yours, Chair, David Mania, pass a PIC amendment bill. There was a COPE amendment bill around same-sex. So this is the evolving nature of Parliament. Members have the same status as executive. And if there's a bill by any member, whether they're from the EFF or FF+, if it's progressive, if it speaks to workers' issues, we will support it. We are committed from our side, Chair, to engage our alliance partners, all MPs across party line. So this bill speaks to workers' rights, it speaks to fighting state capture, we should support it. And it will be a journey, Chair, because once Parliament can pass the bill, I think the bill is useful in terms of providing a path forward about capacitating the state, resourcing it, reporting to Parliament, etc. Because we do find, Chair, a real challenge that we have good bills being passed, departments forget about it. But I think, Chair, it also means that once it's passed, we hope it will be passed, it gives a task to Parliament to exercise an oversight role as well to make sure state organs have complied with it. So, Chair, last conclusion, then I'll stop talking. So we urge government, when they come, the ANC, all political parties in Parliament to support it. We hope it can be expedited. We do know Parliament takes some time to pass bills. We would encourage, extending the public hearings to any member of the public. We do appreciate this is kind of the preliminary phase around consideration, etc. But you chairs, you can count on our support as COSATU to processing this bill, to adopting it. And of course, we would love to see then the President signing into law. So let me stop there, Chair, and hopefully I stuck to the time limit. And thanks, Chair, and thanks, Honourable Maotwe, for giving us this space. Thank you, Chair.
Indeed, Mr. Parks, thank you very much for your presentation. It is welcomed. May I ask, Sitau, are you happy with the presentation? Would you like to give any further inputs, or are you happy with what Mr. Parks has? Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as COSATU, and as an affiliate of COSATU, we stand by the position. Maybe just to indicate that, SATAWA as a union works between the public and the private sector. And there's certain challenges, obviously, when we're dealing with our private sector partners that we still have to engage quite substantively. And one particular issue that is important and that hasn't come up is the issue around SMMEs. There's, in terms of the competition bill, in terms of job creation, et cetera, there's a particular effort that's been made towards ensuring that particularly historically disadvantaged people are able to enter the market, are able to compete, and they find themselves in the so-called tendering or contracting process. So I think it would be important for us to be able to, as we move towards insourcing and really challenging the issues around corruption. I was speaking to somebody in the freight and logistics and transport, for example, and he was saying, one of the ways in which you can actually streamline a lot of the corruption that's happening in logistics and freight is government departments use a program called JAGA. And so, and government departments also have a service provider database. So if a lot of those processes become online, you get people submitting things online. So a lot of, instead of having 400 pages, you actually have an automated system that does all the delineation for you. And a lot of the times where there's spaces for corruption, it actually gets omitted because you're using an automated system. And in that way, at least our SMMEs would be able to remain within the system. So I think it would be something that in terms of the overarching, we don't want to disadvantage comrades that we've actually asked and we'll be creating the space in terms of job creation because they're obviously employing people as well. And that's quite an important relationship that we need to manage. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the inputs and the presentation. It is appreciated. Members, that brings us to the deliberation part of the agenda. Honourable Ndamase, do you have a separate point or? Okay. So, members, I think what has worked for the committee in our physical sittings and what we should employ again today is that we give all members an opportunity. I think, Honourable Khilisi, are you comfortable that you go last? And I think it's practical as well, then you would have heard all the members' inputs. So, Honourable Whip, if we can start with you, then we will move through this block, and end with Honourable Khilisi at the end. Honourable Kaba, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Let me welcome all the presentation that has been presented before us, Chair. Chairperson, as a committee, I think we noted the presentation. As we noted the presentation, we hear the presenters what they are saying, but we will continue to give other stakeholders to present. And after that, Chair, we will follow the normal procedure and we will come back and talk about that after we given all stakeholders to present, such as Treasurer and Presidency and others. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Honourable Tikana.
Thank you, Chair. In seconding the Honorable Klaba, I would wish also to welcome the reports, and I would indicate that it's a step moving forward now that the bill has been presented to the committee. And I would recommend that we note the report and we follow the processes of engaging on the bill as it is tabulated, that we would expect Treasury and the Presidency to make their submissions to the committee moving forward. I think let's engage on the processes of considering the bill to the latter stage and making engagements on it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Langa.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Honorable committee members, the author of the bill, Honorable Maotwe, Kosatu and Satau leadership, all protocol observed. Chair, let me join my colleagues in welcoming the presentation, the bill presentation by Honorable Maotwe, and also the presentation by Kosatu. Chair, let me again also join my colleagues in concurring with what they've submitted, and also just to say we, as a committee, we are constituted of different parties, and we take note of the bill and we'll have to take it to our parties so that we share what was presented to us, and then I guess we will then follow the procedure moving forward. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much. Honorable Pulwane.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chair. And good morning, everyone. Honorable members, the Kosatu, Satawi, Honorable Maotwe, and everyone. Chair, I think I'm covered by my colleague. We welcome all the presentation for today. We will follow the process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Space.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. Thank you, Honorable Maotwe, and also to Satawa and Kosatu. I think first and foremost, one must acknowledge that the presentation that was done and the issues raised in terms of the bill is definitely not imaginary, the concerns. It's definitely worth looking at it in depth, and I think that is what I want to say from the onset. I do believe that, as was said and without having to repeat it, that one needs, with a bill like this, apply our minds, and that when we deliberate, or when I would want to deliberate, I would want to have all the information, all presentations and all inputs in front of me in order for me to make a valuable input. So I would then, in support of my colleagues, ask that today I'll not articulate myself on it, and that we do then give an opportunity for all other role players, and then as a committee consider the bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Honorable Malinga.
Thank you, Chair. Let me greet the members of the committee, supporting staff, the labor on the other side, the sponsors of the bill. Firstly, Chair, let us welcome this progressive bill that is going to assist the poor workers. As we are sitting here, those workers are exploited by their bosses. And I'm looking here, Chair, I can see that from 2020, this bill was tabled to be discussed in the parliament. I'm counting the years now. And I've got that fear that why the document that is going to assist the society, especially these poor of the poorest workers, there was no move in this bill. I don't know why. We really appreciate the presentation that is coming from the EFF in the Insourcing Bill. We believe that it's going to assist the poor workers, especially those sectors that they have indicated in the document. And secondly, Chair, I think I need to be frank in this one. I can see that there's a representatives from Labour that are supporting this bill, Chair, but unfortunately, I'm not sure in terms of how, whether they will assist the Labour in fairness, because as we are sitting here, we're discussing this bill in terms of Section 198, subsection A in Labour Relations Act. The Labour, they are failing currently to implement that. And Section 83, in terms of Basic Condition of Employment Act, they are failing to implement those acts that are there in terms of insourcing, because those labor brokers that are exploiting the workers. So if the unions were there, they were going to implement those acts so that this exploitation will be vanished. But I'm not sure. Let me close, Chair, by saying, in terms of the document and the wording, I think as the committee and the sponsors, we need to be very much careful. Currently, we've got the sectoral dissemination that is talking about the minimum wage, but there are clauses there that are still oppressing the workers, because the minimum wage doesn't allow to the employee that is not working 9 hours. So I think when it comes to this bill, we need to be very much careful in terms of the clauses that are there, so that we are not going to come with a document that we believe is going to help the workers, but at the same time, because of these minor clauses that are there, it will exploit them more. Let me close, Chair, by saying we welcome the income from the Labour. I'm not sure, maybe my memory is outdated, because my understanding was that COSATU is in a tripartite, but I've heard COSATU in record stating that they will work with EFF, they will work with FF+, but so I was confused on that one, but it's the subject for another day. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Malinga. Honourable Ndamase.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not well today, but as a student of Marx and Engels, having started in understanding George Hegel before getting into Marx, there is no way that you can understand Aristotle better if you have not studied Plato. I have these comments. The first point is, as an aspirant Marxist-Leninist, and I'm deliberately saying as an aspirant, there is no way that I cannot support this. But to me, that becomes a microcosm of a challenge of a macro system that we have. I would argue strongly for an economic transformation more than this one, because this one is at a micro level. But let me make these points. I'm coming from an organization that characterized itself as a disciplined force of the left 24 years ago. 24 years ago, we characterized ourselves as the ANC, as the disciplined force of the left. Now, Comrade Parks here comes only with SATAO, and I'm looking for my union, SATU. Where is SATU here? And where are other unions that are affiliates of COSATU? And I'm serious about that question. The second one in relation to COSATU is, what is the view of SACTU? I'm interested. What is the view of SACTU in this arrangement? Now, the first presenter, Honorable Maotwe, would refer to something called before, as we did before. I don't subscribe to that. To me, it is not a question of what did we do before, and therefore we must emulate what we did before, because I would only look at now and the future because of my own orientation that I've already outlined. Because before, things were so bad before, I don't want to be reminded about them. If I can articulate the experiences that I have about before, then we would all get out of this room and run. Now, I am hearing my colleagues referring to Treasury, Presidency, but for me, we are the Public Service and Administration. Of course, Treasury has a role to play. Of course, Trade and Industry and Competition has a role to play. Of course, higher education has a role to play. Small business development has a role to play, and any other sector that I may not have touched. We will only be able to confine ourselves within the ambit of the Public Service and Administration Portfolio Committee. We're not all these other things. We're only this thing. Now, my questions to the first presenter are the following. They talk about what they call stakeholders targeted for insourcing. It doesn't matter whether I agree with the terminology, because the conjugation of verbs now may not be as relevant as it could be, but they matter the most. They talk cleaning, they talk catering services, security services, transport, gardening, and I get irritated when we get to gardening, because it's a question of saying, let's not touch the financial sector. It is too lily white for us. Let's think about security officers in the gate. Let's think about the gardeners. Then my question is why? Why not? Why haven't we looked into the financial sector? Because that's a key thing that is driving our economy, and that hot money that is being exchanged there, don't want to have anything to do with what is happening there. Then secondly, why not mining? Where is mining here? Because state is directly involved in the mining processes. We might have argued differently at some point. My question is, where is mining here? Then the support services, the whole notion of dealing with support services. What about tertiary services? That's my question. And then, is there nothing we can do about the banking services? On the issue of the capable state, of building a developmental state. That's an ongoing argument, and Comrade Parks should be aware that we may call ourselves aspirant developmental state. We are not it. We are not it if we look at the fundamentals of it. And therefore, the EFF must not make a mistake of characterizing this state as a developmental state. It is not. Of course, it aspires to be, and therefore, looking at it, perhaps if you look at it from the Asian tigers, you may be able to say, looking at 1, 2, 3, it is not, and therefore, what is it that you must be able to do to get to that stage? Then exemptions. There are exemptions that are articulated in the document. My question is why? I'm asking a question, and that does not assume that I don't agree with insourcing. I've said it up front, I totally agree with it. In fact, I agree with something more than it. And therefore, these are innocent questions that must be answered. Then the issue of the cost-benefit analysis. Because if we put here, we put insourcing, and we're able to say outsourcing, these are the things bad about insourcing, about outsourcing, these are the good ones. We're running a state here, not a spaza shop, and therefore we must be able to be informed on some kind of a research of that. Here is the cost-benefit analysis that must drive us to be able to do it. And therefore, can the initiator be able to articulate those so that we can understand them better and interrogate those in the form of a cost-benefit analysis that is going to convince everybody else that this is the way to go? Irregular expenditure. Okay, let's start with AXA first. I have had a discussion for my study purposes. I've had a discussion with MBSA, Mercedes-Benz. And then they tell you in no uncertain terms that we may be relying on auto sector in Eastern Cape, but the fact of the matter is that skills are not there. And then we argue and say we have graduates that come out of universities. But they tell you, point blank, that the amount of money that we spend on creating skills internally is this amount, and that is why we're unable to be able to absorb people. And then the question is, looking from the point of view of the unions, then do we really have the correct skills that are needed by the economy? Seated looking at the industrial policy or the industrial strategy, then these people that are responsible for leveraging what we do in the form of the special economic zones, they tell you that the reason the economy of Eastern Cape is not growing is because of the logistics nightmare. If you want to produce anything in Eastern Cape, you are far away from the whole country. Secondly, they are going to tell you that it is the issue of what they call skills mismatch. Then, if higher education is not here, higher education and training, the sponsors of the document, can you be able to explain to us what is it that will be done in terms of making that you upscale the skills that are going to be equivalent to the skills that one would need in the insourcing process? That's a fair question. And can we answer to it? If we have not done the correct research thus far, we must be able to say it up front. Then, in the question of the skills mismatch, we insource tomorrow or we insource next year. Then in terms of what is there in the state, do we have enough plumbers to be able to do what we want? Do we have enough joineries? Do we have people that are going to be able to give effect to what we are talking about? How far have you gone in relation to that? So that the interaction you might have had with the Department of Science and Innovation, we can be able to be taken into confidence in relation to that, because they have a responsibility to do there. We can't continue with an economy where we say that there is a question of skills mismatch. Then the question is, higher education and training, what are you doing? Department of Science and Innovation, what is it that you are doing to be able to say, we don't only have 2 or 3 innovators, we're able to produce real innovators that are going to be able to participate actively in this economy. Now, the problem statement. Your problem statement also talks about collapse of service delivery. It will be wrong, for instance, if we can allow that kind of a perspective to flourish. Do we therefore, are we confident to say that immediately we do this other one, we will be able to make sure that the service delivery flourishes? Because if we can talk state capture has to do everything to do with an ethical public servant. With an ethical public servant. Because if you are not, it does not matter whether we've insourced the services. You are going to continue to steal. If your job is to steal when you are in an environment where you have all the likelihood and have all the tools to be able to steal. Then my last point is in relation to the PFMA. There is no way that we can sit here and say, because there was Exchequer Bill, Exchequer Act before PFMA. So the best thing that we have had in the country was an Exchequer Act. That is not true. PFMA was an improvement from a particular legislation that was there, which was totally wrong. Because corruption flourished then. It does not have happened that corruption started in 1994. There is no such. There was a lot of corruption that was hidden far before 1994, and then the legislation what was used to be able to unearth those. And therefore, looking at the weaknesses of the PFMA, because any legislation has its strong points and has its own weaknesses. In terms of what is contained in the already legislated legislation, I'm making an example about PFMA. Does it not allow? Where do we think that this legislation that we have wants us to outsource? I will say no, there is no such. There is no policy of the ANC that has ever supported outsourcing. There is none. I have been in the Economic Transformation Subcommittee for years in the ANC. There is none. And therefore, are we unable to exercise oversight for the accounting officers to do their job? Because in the PFMA, they have all the powers there not to do outsourcing. Why do they continue to do? Because at some point when I sit down, Chair, there was a time when we talk about procurement, and we thought when we can have a chief procurement officer, everything else is going to happen. If you don't give powers to your accounting officers, and you hope that there is going to be big police there that is going to be able to say, don't do it this way, your treasury regulations are a hindrance for that matter. If they do not give allowance to accounting officers to do their job, if they don't do their job, we must be able to cause them to account. The legislative arm has a responsibility to exercise that oversight. The MEC in the form of provinces, the minister in the form of the national government has a responsibility to exercise oversight over the accounting authorities in their own institutions, and if they don't do that, they are not doing their job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Khaleesi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good morning to you, TG, and my colleagues and representatives of Labour. Chairperson, I obviously want us as this committee to support this bill. Not for the sake of supporting it though, but because it's the most important bill that is going to, bring change to our people. I think, Chair, we mostly agree that the outsourcing system is the primary source of corruption, and we talk about it a lot in this committee because we deal with public service. With all the inflated contracts. And I think, Chair, not so long ago, I don't know which witness, I think it was Ket Matlala, and he was saying that he used to spend about R1 million a month, to bribe. And this is because of the tenders that he was getting from the state. So this is a cancer that the outsourcing in the tender system has managed to, plant in our public service. So the bill slashes all of that. including what they have mastered, which is the manipulation of the procurement system. And we talk about it a lot as well when we get presentations from, the department. We know that the supply chain is where the rot is. Because these are the people who choose these companies and are able to make money out of that. And I think, Chairperson, one of the things we should appreciate is that this bill talks about another point that we usually, emphasize on in this committee, which is the annual skills audits. We always talk about the skills audits and creation of a skills database. You see, there's a case in the Eastern Cape that came up now. There's a spokesperson there, I think a premier spokesperson or one of the MECs, Sizwe Kupelo. If this was being done on an annual basis, they would have picked up a long time ago that that guy doesn't have a skill to be the spokesperson because he doesn't even have matric. So there is a case in front of the court now to establish whether he has a matric. And this is a person who has been serving in the high-ranking position that he doesn't qualify for. So it excites me because it also allows the state to manage its human resource. You are able to identify the skills gap and to build the permanent skilled workforce. I went for an oversight at Grey Hospital in the Eastern Cape, King Louwston, where I come from, Che. The organogram is something that they don't, forget about it when you get, even Scolpa did visit that hospital. So what they do is that, I'm not exaggerating, they can take a person from the kitchen and put them in finance. This is what is happening there, because now they don't have the staff that is skilled in the hospital, and so these are the things that we need to consider when we are dealing with this. And Chair, we go around a lot of buildings and you find out that there's no maintenance. I don't think this is a state building that has been fully maintained. There were talks even when Parliament, was engulfed in fire, that possibly it had not been maintained for a very long time. So you've got the state buildings that are collapsing now because there's never been maintenance. And this bill also talks to that as well, that you insource people who are going to maintain, the departments and the state institutions. We do have skills, and Honorable Ndamase was talking about this. I think we have a lot of skills. We can't say or question a bill by questioning whether we have skills or not. We have skills, Chair, and this is demonstrated when you have doctors protesting in the streets because they are unemployed, right? So that is one of the things. So you can't want to discard or not consider the whole thing because you're saying there's no skill, because people are sitting at home. We are Eastern Cape alone is above 40% in terms of unemployment. So people are there, and we're not saying these are people who are not skilled, these are people who are not educated, these are not people who can be, employed and insourced in public service. So, Chair, when services are performed by state employees, another positive about our bill is that the accounting officer and the organ of the state have the direct control and oversight. And these are the things we always talk about, when we're talking about oversight and accountability. For instance, now, there was, I think in the Val, there was 14 kids who were killed in an accident by a taxi driver who was possibly drunk. There are rumors that he was drunk. But we are saying, if you insource people for, like, the state has transport and drivers, and they're playing oversight on these issues, then the state is responsible. We can't say the third person. And, even when we see these kids, you see the advancers, they've got kids and there's overload. And when you're counting them as they get out of these cars, and you're like, I can't believe all these children were actually cramped in that car. So this bill also talks to that. And my colleague there, Honorable Tikana, I think it's one of the things she wanted to do in the Eastern Cape, to insource drivers and the transport, so that the Department of Transport is responsible for that, Chairperson, because it creates a clear line of accountability to the public. We should all want. So services like security, cleaning, and IT, as TG has said, these are the recurring needs. Insourcing creates a stable workforce, and it eliminates these distractions of saying, no, a person will come at 1 o'clock. So between now and 1 o'clock, we can't work because we are waiting for an IT specialist that is outsourced who's going to come. So the work of the department or the work of the institution is at halt in that moment, because we still are awaiting a person who is coming from outside. That gap that occurs, it is attended to, Chairperson. I think you remember when we went to the Northwest as this committee, we get there and it was like, it's not a premier's office, the grass was as tall as me. And we were saying, what is happening here? But if you insource these people, you're not waiting for them to come from outside, you will find out that we can have a space that is presentable. So basically, Chairperson, what I'm saying is that the bill is not just like a labor policy, but it's but a basic good governance and anti-corruption reform. And I think we've been advocates of that. When entities and departments come in front of us, we're always advocating for, good governance. And this does promote a good public administration. Chair, government is popular for, and this was a conversation on social media, but government is popular for making less effort. Because people get there and they don't do the work because someone else from outside is coming to do the work. So they sit there. They actually say that, we just sign a register and someone else is going to come and do the job. And this bill does address all of those things, Chairperson. And I think, to conclude, Chairperson, I just wanted to say, I think TG and our spokesperson maybe are going to respond to this, but I just wanted to say this is an issue that Honorable Ndamase said, but I think this bill, we should see it as a manageable transition, I think, because it respects the existing contracts, Honorable Ndamase, and it allows for those, that's why it allows for those necessary exemptions, and uses the outsourcing contracts themselves as a tool of a future skill. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much for your input. I think I will now give the presenters both an opportunity to just make closing remarks on the deliberations and the inputs received from members. Please go ahead, Honorable Moatwe.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Chair, honorable members, stakeholders, we want to take this opportunity and send our sincere appreciation of the time you've given us to come and present the bill. Chair, I do know that there were more stakeholders who responded to the bill, but my earlier conversation with the secretary is that he depended on the old ones. Remember, the bill is old. It was first introduced in 2020. So he only focused on the stakeholders that came, that made the representations there, or rather submitted inputs there. But we've seen over the past 2 weeks, there's been an influx of inputs from communities, from individuals, from everyone across the length and breadth of this country. So I think it calls for us to have a look at those and engage further. But at this point, honestly, we appreciate the responses. Honourable members, we've taken note of your questions that you've raised. I'll attempt to just summarize and deal with them. Obviously, we are not here to, we are just here to present, introduce the bill, and allow members to go and engage. And the engagement should continue further, even beyond this. Chair, the bill seeks to give a clearer, a more focused, a consistent legislative framework with absolute clarity. There's no ambiguity. There's no, the approach is insourcing. So the default position of government is insourcing. Accounting officers should reset from the default being outsourcing to now being insourcing. It starts from there. So all services must be insourced. And then we can look at those services that are not outsourced. We welcome the comments from members. Member Klaba said, give time to present, and so are the others. Honourable Malinga correctly said this bill started in 2020 and we're now in 2026. So you can see that there's been a time lapse. So, but we appreciate that, Chair, finally we are here. We've kick-started the process. Chair, the services we've listed, as Honourable Domasa was saying, are not exhaustive. It's not a closed group. It's what we see as an immediate, it's a low-hanging fruit, if I may put it that way. But it doesn't mean that we're not looking at other services. He spoke about why we're not tapping into the mining services. It's a good point to make. Maybe Honourable Damaso will bring a private member's bill that speaks to that. Nationalizations of mines and other strategic sectors of the economy. I can help you draft it, Honourable Damase. And correctly so, you say, why not the banking? Chair, we advocated for a state-owned bank. It's there. So my comrade is going to be with us when we draft that. Recently, we also submitted the amendment of the spokesperson, where the minister needs to seek approval from Parliament before he goes and enter into loans with IMF and the World Bank. Public finance management amendment bill in that regard. So we're trying to close all these gaps where we see that here we don't have. Chair, we do have skills. Currently, the services are being offered, but not by the state. So remember we said during the transition period, we need these institutions of government to look at internally, do we have the skill? If not, start the recruitment process. Because the reality is that when there's a blocked drain, at the end of the day, it will be fixed. But it's fixed by an outside person. So the person is there. So now the state must go and identify that person and bring him on board and cut the middleman who is a tenderer. Responding to the question of SMMEs, actually the SMMEs will benefit. We need to re-industrialize in this country. We need to beneficiate. So it can't be that SMMEs are only needed through catering, through cleaning, through laundry service. We need to upskill ourselves. Let's look at China for an example. China, back in the days, they realized that actually we need engineers. We've got shortages of engineers in the country, and we want to industrialize. And without engineers, we can't. They went out to the world, sent their students outside to go and get the necessary qualifications and skills to come and plow back into China. Today, China is running a very highly growing economy in the world because they identified the need, saw a skills gap, and they filled it. So where we see that there's a gap that needs to be filled, let's fill it. And correctly, as Honorable Damaso was saying, what is the role of higher institutions of learning? That's where they need to come into place and bring back those skills. Back in the days, in the Tendamase, during the times of Buputazwana, I know you don't want to go there, but there were specialized schools that deals with specific skills. I know, because I'm coming from Northwest. In Buputazwana, we used to have a specialized agricultural college that produces crop farming, livestock farming, farmers. You knew that when you go to the Taung Agricultural College, that's the skill you're going to get. We used to have manpowers that produces boiler makers, that produces, so those things around plumbing services and infrastructure and everything. But at the moment, those skills are gone. We are testing our people through a book, a exercise, but not everybody can sit in a class and be able to write a test. Other people can work with their hands. That's where countries like Mozambique, they take their students to China to go and learn how to build construction. I mean, at the moment, look at who's building in the main. It's people from those countries who've got a specialized skill. That skill has escaped us now. Just go look in my village. In all of us, we come from villages. That old man who used to build houses, he's old now, he can't build. But where are the young ones that are produced by the system? They're all gone. So we need to place, and that's a question we also raised to the Minister of Finance to say, in your entire budget speech, never said anything about institutions of higher learning. Is education not supposed to be at the center of our development as a country? Let's take, for an example, Transnet. It's very close to my heart because I worked for Transnet for a long time. So at Transnet, for many years, for over 150 years, we were only maintaining the rolling stock from outside. So there's two companies there, GE and EMD, who owns, or who Transnet used to buy rolling stock from, locomotives in the main, and of course wagons we used to produce. Transnet was only maintaining those locos, never built a single locomotive. 150 years. It took a decisive action to say, we need to have our own locomotive with our own IP. And what did Transnet do? Took engineers to UP, to Wits University, to UCT, to Stellenbosch, and they got the right qualifications. We now speak, Transnet has got capacity to build its own locomotive. So it's an insourced skill now. They are no longer just maintaining. They can build their own rolling stock and sell it. Wagons, they are building, I mean, coaches, for an example. Transnet is able to do that in their own. So we're reawakening that chairperson so that the state can be able to provide services. Earlier on, I said, how train is now going to be handed over back to the state. But I'm worried. Does PRASA have capacity to maintain those coaches? But I can tell you for free with my eyes closed, Transnet does that service. And Transnet is a state-owned entity. Transnet has the capacity to build coaches, passenger coaches, to build locomotives, to build wagons. And that's a service that PRASA, for the longest time, have been able to get from Transnet. So we're not saying we're scraping anyone. SMMEs, let's focus on entrepreneurship and get out of the mode of just tenderpreneurship. Let's produce. We've got minerals in the country that are moving or leaving the country in their raw form. But if they were to be beneficiated here, you'll produce everything, iPads, laptops, cell phones. You can produce everything that you want. So, but we need just to bring those services back to the state. With that being said, Chair, once again, we truly appreciate, let's continue to engage each other, even outside of the committee meetings. I'm happy, Chair, that your MEC in KZN asked a very simple question. Why are you failing to unblock the drain yourself as the city of eThekwini? Why do you want the private sector to come in and block the drain for you with an escalated and inflated price? That's your MEC. So we are inspired by such things, that we are all almost in agreement, and even with the comments from the colleagues in the room today, we're happy that we're engaging in this manner. Broadly, we agree in principle that we have a problem, and that problem has not been solved by any of the legislations that we have in the country for currently. That's why we need a centralized, clear, direct, consistent, with absolute clarity, legislative framework to guide how we do our process going forward. That will be it for us, Chair, at this point. I'm not sure if Tirana wants to say anything. She's covered. Thank you, Chair. We'll pause there for now. But let's continue the engagements we appreciate. Let's go and relook at those submissions, Chair. Most of the people who were sending to the Secretary were also copying us. So it will be great to also bring them on board and get to understand which angle they're coming from. And we're not only saying those who are in support of the bill, even those who are opposing it. Let's have a conversation. Maybe we'll meet each other halfway. At the end of the day, we want to build a South Africa that will all be proud of it. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, honourable member. Members, just before I give Kusatu an opportunity to also just give some replies, I would like to note as chairperson that a number of written submissions was received by the committee secretary during the course of last week. It was quite a lot, so it's being compiled into a document, and it will be circulated to committee members so that they can apply their minds and that they can consider those comments as well. So committee members should receive a document with all of those public comments put into one. Thank you very much. I almost said Honourable Parks. Mr. Parks, please proceed.
No, thanks, Chair. You could have called me Comrade Parks, Chair, as the maturing of democracy. Chair, I think just to respond to the questions, I think to Honourable Ndamase, what is the view of unions, etc. Look, so COSATU is a federation of unions. We have unions who are teachers, we have unions who organize clothing workers, who organize domestic workers, mine workers, etc. So we cover all of those unions, because I think, Chair, if we were to bring all of our 18 or so unions into this house, you would complain and say, can't workers organize themselves and come with one input? But I can say, Chair, across all of our unions, this has been a long outstanding issue. I think across all federations too, even those who are not organized in federations. I don't think you'll find a part of organized labor which doesn't want to find progress in this journey, because I think all unions have seen. Honourable Ndamase is right, it's not just in the state. If you go to some of the supermarket giants, you'll find nobody works at that supermarket. There's a cashier comes from this labor broker, the security comes from this one, the cleaning from this one, the shelf packers from another one. So it really fragments workers' ability to unite, to organize, to improve working conditions, etc. So it is a real difficulty. But I think, Vice Chair, the bill begins to speak to the evolving nature of the economy of work and say, how do we make sure the labor rights we have here actually are experienced by workers across the board? And I think, Chair, to be fair to Honourable Maotwe, the bill can't resolve every issue. It's not the Bible. It's just saying, can we respond to this issue in the public service? The other issues we must come to afterwards, local government, SOEs, the private sector, etc. But we appreciate that if we were to put everything in this bill, it would be longer than the Bible, and we would take the next 5 terms. So I think for us, this is the right surgical approach. Chair, also, I must also say, Chair, as COSATU and SATAW, many of our members are also affected by these issues. We have cleaners, we have security guards who have felt the pain of outsourcing. Our Chair, our plea to the committee would be, consider this bill in full, debate it, and I think, as Honourable Maotwe say, what is the sweet spot? We appreciate members come from different political parties, from the left to the right, and in between. But I think, Chair, for us, the bill is pragmatic, it's progressive, it's well thought through. I would be surprised if you can't find, if a member from Party X that doesn't like this, I'm surprised if you couldn't find the sweet spot. There might be us as unions speaking because we're used to negotiating, even for people we fight with, etc. I think, Chair, it would be useful to get the inputs of the Auditor General, the Hawks, the SIU, because then they can speak to the horror stories of the consequence of outsourcing local government across the board. Even to get the Department of Employment and Labor, because they would also know from the inspectors who are the chief culprits when it comes to undermining labor laws. And have further public hearings, open up the space, but we really plead with the committee, consider the bill in full, process it, and then of course you need afterwards to have a program by government. What are we doing on insourcing X? Give a report back, because we have really seen, Chair, time and again, as COSATU, we have to go and chase government to say we passed this progressive law of Parliament 5 years ago, but we have not seen real progress in terms of implementing it, and it's a real crisis, irrespective of party line. Chair, I think Honourable Malinga is right about 2020. And again, that's been an issue we've experienced at times. Bills take far too long for Parliament to process. Yes, we appreciate there's many issues you have to prioritize. I think this should be one of them. We would not want to see this bill being discarded or rejected. If there's space to strengthen, fantastic. And again, Chair, for us as Labour, it's about getting the foot in the door. After the foot, you'll get the knee, etc. We don't have to build Rome in a single day, but this bill is a useful way. I think Honourable Malinga, does it benefit workers? No, it would, Chair. It will elevate collective bargaining. It will make it easier for workers who are not fearful of being dismissed because they're on permanent 3-month contracts to unionize. It will make it easier to ensure we adhere to the labour laws. And Chair, people often demonize labour laws like as some sort of gremlin sitting out there. Labour laws is about the right to work in a safe environment, the right to maternity leave, to overtime pay, things we'd want all of our children or relatives to enjoy. It would speak to improving working conditions. And if you address those things, Chair, you'll find workplace productivity improves, because a worker who feels respected is more excited to work. A worker who is treated like a slave, not going to be productive. Chair, I think we all know the cancer of state capture and corruption. This will help it to address it. Won't resolve it overnight, but as a useful further tool. It will help recapacitate the ability of the state to deliver. Chair, I know the question about minimum wage, I know it's off track, but we can have a discussion afterwards. But it applies to all workers. There was detractors then, but now benefits millions. But there is an issue of compliance. Again, it's a good law, but you find certain employers tend to ignore it. So hence you found in the SONA commitment to increasing more inspectors, et cetera, et cetera. Chair, so Honourable Maotwe comes from the EFF, and as far as workers and all MPs, once they're sworn in, are equal. Whether you come from a one-person party or you come from a majority party, you're equal to members of the executive. This is how voters chose the election results. But I think what counts for us, Chair, is not that Honourable Maotwe is from the EFF and she wears the same red as us, but the bill is progressive. It speaks to issues affecting workers. And we have worked with other parties, the ACDP, the DA, COPE, when they've come up with progressive bills, we're happy. In fact, we want all MPs to come with progressive bills. And we think, Chair, that all parties should not find it difficult to support this bill. And I think, Vice Chair, the role of Parliament is about improving the lives of workers, of society, the issue of corruption and capacitating the state, growing the economy. We have different colored T-shirts. We'll box each other on election day. It's fine. But afterwards, we must deal with the issues. And I think, Chair, Honourable Maotwe made 2 good points now in response. So I think, was it last year, Gibela celebrated building the 300th locomotive last year from industry which had collapsed some time ago. They're targeting 600 by 2030. I think, Chair, they're going to exceed the target. And that creates an industrial capacity to export to neighboring states, to create local jobs. Why must we import trains from China and then fight about spare parts, et cetera, et cetera? The Minister for Public Works has been quite bullish, correctly so, about insourcing office space for the state. Why is the state renting offices when there's vacant property? And again, it's the issue of insourcing, of corruption. We would hear horror stories. I think all of us would have heard a horror story around office rental. Chair, look, the bill can't resolve every issue of the economy, the labour market, it's fine. But it speaks to the issue of outsourcing the public service. It speaks to vulnerable workers. I think, Chair, the member has done well to provide exemptions, because you must always have some limited surgical exemptions. But it's not a blank check. There's a criteria. Can't it be provided? Is it only an international company which can do it, etc.? A process for accountability, for approval. But Chair, you know, when you look at the fiscus, and all of us had to scratch our heads last year to find the 53 billion rand from the 2% VAT hike. This is going to help address that. It's going to help reduce state capture corruption, rebuild the state. Chair, I think Honorable Damase, I forget which honorable member raised it, but the need to empower the chief procurement officer. That's obviously a critical thing. The sixth parliament passed the Public Procurement Act just before the last elections. So it hasn't come into effect yet. Treasury is still busy with regulations, et cetera, et cetera. So I think for us, that's why we need to continue to push and to make sure we empower a chief procurement officer, because she would have, or he would have, a critical role to play. But I think, Chair, listen, in conclusion, look, for us, this is a fair bill. It's progressive, it's pragmatic, it's thoughtful, it's reasonable. It's not the end of the road, but the first step, and I'm sure we can find each other. I'll be disappointed if we don't find each other, because really, I'll be surprised if any party here doesn't want to resolve this issue. And I think, Chair, just to give a thanks to the Chair and to the members for giving us some space, and we'll be keen to continue to offer our support and to continue engage on this important bill. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, if we are happy to close the deliberations, I'm not sure if any other member would like a second bite. Honourable Malinga, did you raise your hand? You're welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I was just checking, hoping that Labour will cover the issue of the skills that Honourable Damase was talking about. I thought that Labour will deal with the issue of the levies going straight to the SETAs, because that is the fundamental of the establishment of SETAs in terms of the skills. If there's a specific area where there is a cry about the skill, I think that they were going to cover that so that we'll be on the same page. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. That's a little bit out of the scope of this meeting, but would you like to reply to that? You are welcome to.
No, thanks, Chair. Apologies for not responding to that, but yeah, we also did think it is slightly outside of the scope of the bill. Look, I think, Chair, we would agree, and I think in the State of the Nation address by the President last month, I think he highlighted the need for a discussion amongst all of us, because the amount of money we're spending on skills, be it at schools, TVETs, SETAs, universities, is not providing the skills that the economy of today, let alone the economy of tomorrow, requires. You can't have a crisis where an employer says we don't have enough long-distance truck drivers or plumbers or artisans, yet we have a 41% unemployment rate. And we don't buy the argument. People say that, well, South Africans are lazy. I think if you go to any township, I think young people would be keen for a skills training opportunity, keen to find work, etc. So we do need to have that overhaul. And Chair, I don't think we have a shortage of money on many fronts. I think there's a huge amount of corruption, state captured SETAs. I think, again, we know the horror stories. And at times you find the courses being provided don't make sense. It's a kickback to a friend. And so if we really want to address the issue of unemployment and growing the economy, it's something we need to have that discussion. I know it's far outside of this bill, Chair, and we might be encroaching on DHET committee's territory. But I think, Chair, we would agree, I think, to the point of Honourable Malinga, this is a crisis point, and if we're to go from 1% growth to the 3% plus we need, we have to fix the skills issue, Chair. But yeah, thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honourable Ndumase.
Chair, one point that I missed in relation to what Honourable Maotwe was articulating as it relates to the decry by the Auditor General in relation to contract management, to poor contract management. I would add that as much as that is so, to me, what can be added is the challenge of the project management skills in the management of our organizations. I can leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add and thank the comrade, the honourable member for the point on skills. In fact, I think the bill is actually going to do precisely what we need. If you're going to be talking about insourcing and we're needing skills within government, it's going to become the catalyst for why we need to be skilling, because we're not going to be looking to the private sector. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Members, if there are no further inputs, then that brings us to the end of this meeting. Honourable Maotwe, I'd like to specifically thank you for your disciplined and professional presentation that you did today. Members, thank you for your professional conduct. We started on time. It was a good and efficient meeting. Stau and Kusatu, thank you for your inputs, that you were here as well. We really appreciate that you came out. And with that, members, we look forward to the further processing of the bill, the steps that we will need to follow, and that will come onto the committee program as we program the next quarter's committee. But for the moment, I think we can adjourn the meeting, and thank you for everybody's attendance. Have a good day.